I'm the chairman of a group called the Alkaptonuria Society, which we've shortened to AKU because most people can't pronounce Alkaptonuria. And we're a patient group working on AKU, which was actually the first metabolic disease ever identified 100 years ago. In 1901, in London, a doctor called Dr. Archibald Garrod identified it as an inborn error of metabolism. So it's the birth of metabolic medicine. 100 years later, in 2003 was when we set up the patient group, and it was a patient and a doctor who set it up. And from the start, we've always had patients and clinicians and researchers right at the heart of what we do. So the reason I'm involved is both my children have got the illness. They're aged 10 and 7, Julian and Daniel. When they're children, it doesn't really affect them. The only symptoms are their urine goes black, So we found out when they were born because their nappies were going black. And their earwax goes black. But it's probably subclinical. The real clinical damage starts in the 20s and 30s with an extreme form of osteoarthritis. It's called black bone disease because the bones go black and brittle and then collapse, and it affects the heart, all kinds of things. So what we did is that we realised, very little research being done, and our stories is so typical of a rare disease story. I mean, I'm sure you've all experienced this, misdiagnosis, everything. The first doctor we saw said it was my wife eating red cabbage, which was going into the breast milk, into the child, into the urine. So, it's that kind of stuff that we faced. So I joined shortly afterwards, and 6 months ago I decided to leave my job to devote myself full-time, really, to this, with support from my family. And really just to start with a little bit of theory, actually. I did a PhD a few years ago in an area of sociology called social movement studies. And I studied the anti-poverty movement, the anti-poverty in Africa movement, which is very big in the UK. And it's only recently that I realised that what we learnt there is directly applicable to the rare disease movement. And this is what we've been trying to do. And what we found was that there are 4 things which are important to grow a social movement. And this is either a specific disease movement, like the Marshall-Smith syndrome or the AKU Society, or a whole movement like what Eurordis is doing with rare diseases. And these factors are the following. First of all, mobilisation of resources. Without mobilising people, time and money, you're going to find it difficult. So that's the first thing. Second thing is a sense of collective identity. And I think what Hans Wilhelm was just telling us about what he's done with Marshall-Smith syndrome is about creating a family and a sense of collective identity. And that's crucial, whether it's for the peace movement, the feminist movement, or the rare disease movement. The third one is what they call interpretive frames. And that is your understanding of the disease and how it affects you. The frame through which you interpret the actual disease and making sure that everyone shares a similar frame. And the fourth one is the political opportunities. And here's where eurordis comes in because of all the lobbying they do in creating the political opportunities. Now, what the web does, it allows you to unleash a lot of these forces in a much faster way. However, first of all, a caveat. What we've realised is the internet is amazing, but it is no substitute for face-to-face interaction. And what we saw again with Hans Wilhelm, the kind of family meetings, I think are crucial because it's the strength of these interactions, the friendships that develop between the patients and the doctors and industry, which are really going to manage to create, change. So very quickly, I'm using here, this is the first time I've used this presentation software. It's called Prezi. And if you like it, go to the website because it's actually quite engaging, So if it messes up, this is very much an experiment. But a little bit about building the AKU movement using the web. Okay, that's our logo. Okay, there we go. The tools we use. So I've divided this into 2 sections. The tools we're currently using and the tools we're looking at. And really, first of all, our current website. Now, for this website, if you are currently thinking of redesigning your website, you might want to have a look at this. It's called groups, group.ps, okay? What we realised is that there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's blogs, there's all kinds of things, and it's just a mess, because you're spending all your time updating these things. Then you've got a website to update, you've got LinkedIn, and it's just like, what do I do? So what this website does, it aggregates everything. So here, it automatically pulls in from something called HubMed all the latest articles on Alkaptonuria. We don't do nothing. It just updates them. So that's a recent one that was published, you know, one just before, etc. Here you have our blog, which feeds directly into it. Further down, you've got Twitter that goes straight into it. Here you've got Google Translate, which is really, really useful if you don't have the money clearly for translations. Just Giving, which is our online fundraising, feeds into it. So everything feeds into this. So the website always looks new and busy, and we don't actually have to do anything to actually update it. You know, really nice. You can also log in with Facebook. I can't remember where that's gone. That's somewhere around here. That's right, yes. There we go. That's probably why. And then you've also got, you can do profiles. So it's a real online community which brings everything together, you know. And we found that was incredibly helpful. And it brings together scientific research as well as what the patients do. Okay. And really what we found is that people consume information in very different ways. Some people like internet websites, some people like blogs, some people like e-newsletters, some people like hand-printed newsletters, some people like phone calls, others like meetings. And if you really want to have a very effective communications campaign, you have to use all of those. And that's where the next thing comes in. This was the first means of communication we started using 8 years ago, Yahoo groups, and I still use it once a month. Because the great thing about this, it goes straight into people's inboxes, and those who don't go to their website, you know, it's just a great one-way traffic. And I'm sure you've all got e-newsletters. And if you don't, set one up every single month with information. Because what we found is that this goes to more than 600 people. And probably 3 times that amount read it, because it just gets sent round and it starts to appear on other websites. So if you don't have an e-newsletter, set one up, basically. Then we have a blog, okay. Originally, 6 months ago, I started a blog that was called the AKU Quest for a Cure. And then I came across a blog by some guy who is writing a guide on publishing, so nothing to do with rare diseases. And he's been writing his blog for 6 years, and he gets thousands of people reading it because he self-publishes books and he tells everyone how he's done it. And I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, well, everything that we're learning, other people probably want to know. They probably want to know who the funders are. They probably want to know why our clinical trial failed. We recently had a trial that failed. You know, so what we do is every day, we've called this the AKU Guide for Rare Disease Groups, and every day we provide a blog posting on something that we've learned, you know. So, for instance, yesterday we published a report that we've just done with a volunteer from KPMG, and he did a study for us to find how much an average AKU patient costs to the National Health Service in the UK. So we've published all that on here, and this is very useful for funding, because now we're going to the National Health Service and we're saying the average patient might cost up to £100,000. Because of no access to treatment and poorly coordinated care. If we set up a centralised centre, you'll save money, you know. And, you know, if you're interested in doing a similar study, just let us know and we'll tell you how we've done it, you know. So that's what we're using the blog for. Online communities, we've heard all about it. It's brilliant, you know. We're really happy with it. It's really nice, really user-friendly, lovely to see. And this here is a video from the Secretary of the AKU Society North America saying how AKU affects her. So we really like it. Well, do you use LinkedIn? Does anybody here use LinkedIn? Yeah, okay. Another means, it's pretty good, you know. So it's just a great way of providing kind of news to your whole work network about what's going on. If you don't use it, set it up. It's worth a go, basically. We use Facebook. I'm not a huge Facebook fan. I find there's so much noise on Facebook. Maybe I'm just past the kind of Facebook stuff, but 150 people are on it. You know, we have the French AKU Society, the Italian, the English, the Americans, and all that. And we use it for all kinds of things, like when we do fundraisers, you know, like and stuff like that. So it's nice. I think it's a bit overhyped, personally, Facebook, but I think, you know, it has its place. Rare disease blogs. This is a eurordis and Nord initiative, and every so often we do a posting on there, which is maybe, rather than specifically about AKU, might be more about our views on the rare disease sector, etc. And again, a great opportunity to actually get our stuff out there. So the tools that we're testing, and this is crucial, And in the next few minutes, what I'm going to tell you about is where we see things going. And this actually goes quite well into what they were presenting this morning, the patient outcomes. One of the problems we have is lack of data. You know, we have a registry. It's on a computer in a spare room on the 5th floor of the hospital in Liverpool, which nobody can access apart from one person, okay? And it's got ethics approval. And no one else is allowed to access it because of confidentiality and blah-de-blah-de-blah, but that's not very useful, you know. So we want to do an online registry, basically. We want a registry that patients can access and fill in, that clinicians can access, that can be anonymized and then used for clinical trials, etc. And we've been going round in circles, really, to try and find this. This is Patient Crossroads. We've been speaking to them for the past year now. They're based in the US. You might want to have a look. In about a month's time, they are launching a free version of their online registry with some basic questions, and we spoke to them yesterday. And what they're going to be doing, it's actually quite a good service, but the free bit will be specific questions. And if you want to add questions about your disease, sorry, the free bit will be general questions. If you want to add questions about your disease, you'll have to pay. But since it'll be free, you can test it, get an idea, and all that kind of stuff, you know. Well, we heard about patients like me. We've spoken to them a number of times. I share similar reservations to what was said this morning. I think it's very strong functionality. I'm a little bit uneasy about stuff being sold to industry. Cure Together, very similar to patients like me. We tested it out. You get perhaps 10, 20 questions set up, and then you have to pay again to get new ones set up. So the key problem is there are loads of things out there, and you can't just start loads of different projects. Otherwise, you might have 10 patients on Cure Together, 15 on patients like me. What do you do? And I think that's why what I heard this morning was so encouraging. But this, for us, is very interesting because it's completely different. This is a guy called Mohammed who lives in Cambridge. He suffers from a rare disease. And what Patients Know Best does, it basically gives the power to the patient. And what it does is that as a patient, you go around and you ask your hospital for all your medical records, you ask your doctor for all your medical records, and you control your records and they become yours, which you take from one doctor and one hospital to the next. And then it provides very powerful software to let you analyze it. So it's not a typical registry, it's very different to what we heard this morning, but it can be used as a registry because you as a patient group can get involved and you can bring together all your patients and analyse the data, etc. So that's where we are. We're still not sure where we're going on this, but we think that that's really where the kind of the future kind of lies, at least for us, you know. The last thing that we're trying to crack is fundraising on the internet. And if any of you have really managed to do this, let me know. We use a website called Just Giving, where people can either give directly to us or they can set up their own sponsorship pages where people can give to them if they do a parachute jump or whatever, and then that comes to us. But if there's any way, I think it's just the challenge we all face of trying to unlock the internet as a fundraising tool, you know, I'd be very interested. So that's really where we are. What we've managed to do really in conclusion is what we've seen is that the internet for us creates actually quite a lot of power, you know. What we've seen is that scientists, they're not good communicators really. Industry are so stuck in like 20 years ago, you know. Every time they send out a press release, it has to be checked by 50 people, you know. But we as patients, we have very strong communication power. And that's where our power lies. We have access to the patients and we can actually make some noise, you know, and we can create a real sense of identity. So I think the next challenge, and I think this is again what eurordis is trying to do, and I think it's really good, is how do we actually get past everyone working on their own disease and actually create a real movement using all these tools?